Buenos dias, good morning. Welcome to GWU, and welcome on behalf of the Cisneros Hispanic Leadership Institute. I would like to start off today's forum by sharing a quote from sociologist Douglas Massey. Massey writes, "If one does not understand how a complicated piece of machinery works, one should not try to fix it. Without a clear picture of how a mechanical system functions, what its basic principles are, and how its various parts interconnect to influence one another, one is unlikely to be able to restore the machinery to health if it's not working well, or to modify it effectively if a different outcome is desired. Without a clear conception of how the various moving parts of the machine fit together to function as an integrated whole, one cannot readily predict how a change introduced in one part of the system will influence other parts to alter operation or affect outcomes. Blindly tinkering with a gear here or a cog there, or adding new levers and springs simply because they look good, is to invite a host of unintended consequences and perhaps to cause a calamity that no one expected or desired. It should come as no surprise that Massey, one of the most influential sociologists researching U.S.-Mexico migration, uses this analogy to speak about the U.S. immigration system. Throughout history, lawmakers have been tinkering with its different parts of this complex machine without fully understanding how it works or how moving one piece can drastically affect another. Lately, it feels that we just haven't been tinkering but throwing in the whole wrench. I don't claim to be a mechanic when it comes to the immigration machine, but in addition to being the director of the Cisneros Hispanic Leadership Institute, I'm a sociologist, and as such, I'm trained to unpack complex systems. My research over the past 2 decades has looked at some of those unpredicted effects that are often left out of the conversation and the policies when we speak about immigrants. In particular, I've been studying the emotional health and well-being of immigrants, and in particular, immigrants of Latino origin and their families. To frame the conversation today that is going to follow, I would like to share 2 recent projects that I have worked on to expand how we think about immigrant families placed in this complicated machine here in the United States. Last November in 2007, my colleagues of the Milken School of Public Health and I collected data from over 200 Latino parents of adolescents. The goal was understanding the impact that recent immigration news and policies had on their health. What was novel about our study is that we looked at parents across different legal statuses: citizens, legal permanent residents, TPS, and undocumented. And what we found is that the changes in immigration policies had caused Latino families to report high levels of psychological distress, including symptoms of anxiety and depression. While it won't surprise anyone in this audience that the undocumented Latino parents had increased anxiety and depression related to changing policies of the current administration, what may surprise some is that all Latino parents showed increase regardless of their residency status. Yes, even parents who were citizens experienced these adverse effects, sometimes at the same level as undocumented parents. And with all that has happened since last November when we collected this data, it's only reasonable to expect that these effects have gotten worse. We found that these Latino families that we talked to, a majority of whom were documented in some form and legally living in the United States, often also avoided medical care or seeking public services that they were eligible for. They also often warned their children to stay away from the police. Their children, a majority of whom are United States citizens, thus are also negatively affected by their parents' anxiety and precariousness. Yes, immigration policies are harming the future and well-being of both immigrants and our own citizens. As this effect is not felt, and this effect is not felt just along the southern border, which is what is taking a lot of space in the media these days, our study actually focused on a large city in the mid-Atlantic that will remain no name. In fact, while the summer of 2018 marked the beginning of physical separation of parents from children immediate to their arrival at the border, and as some have already mentioned earlier this morning, family separation has been part of the larger immigration machine for decades. This is the focus of another forthcoming article that I have co-authored with Dr. Elizabeth Aranda, not myself, but my colleague Elizabeth at the University of South Florida. This is part of the Immigrant Youth Project, a project of which we are co-PIs, and it's supported by the National Science Foundation. And in this project, we are interviewing undocumented young adults in Central Florida. Through in-depth interviews with over 50 undocumented Latino young adults living in Florida, most of these having DACA, in our research, we illustrate how undocumented youth experience the current deportation regime that puts them at risk of family separation long after they have crossed the border. Indeed, it's a reminder that programs like DACA essentially represent only a deferment of deportation in the current political climate. The news of these recent family separations signals a heightened deportability of undocumented immigrants. That is, the looming threat of family separation is now always on the horizon of these youth and their families, not just the ones now arriving at the southern border, but also those established across the United States. Much like we see with the Latino parents, these youth live in a heightened and all-encompassing fear about the possibility of family separation. This fear is felt across generations. It's multi-generational. One participant in our study recalled trying to calm crying children at the place she volunteered right after Trump got elected. When she asked why they were crying, the staff responded, well, Trump got inaugurated, so to them, their parents automatically got deported in their heads. Unfortunately, some of us know all too well how some parts of the machine work. The young adults we interviewed as part of this research fear for themselves, fear for their families. They view their lives as having expiration dates that coincide with the end of the DACA protection. They know that recent court decisions allowing for renewals still leave them in precarious positions because they can be taken away tomorrow by another court decision. Unfortunately, these fears are not unfounded. Anti-immigrant discourse and xenophobia are the principles behind the current administration's executive orders and policies. His administration has severely reduced annual caps on refugee and asylum admissions, and it's going to go further down. They have announced the fast approaching end dates for the temporary protected status for Nicaraguans, Hondurans, Salvadorans, and Haitians that are coming just in a few months. They have announced plans to remove citizens for immigrants who they are deemed to use fraudulent methods in the process of becoming naturalized. They have proposed regulations to deny permanent residency and possibly deport persons who use certain public services. They are denying U.S. passport to citizens along the southern border. They are proposing changes to the public charge rule. And of course, the summer executive order resulting in the separation of children from their parents in the U.S.-Mexico border. Today's forum is so crucial, but allow me to end on a positive note. In both of these studies, grassroots efforts from their own communities and immigrant rights organizations proved to be an important, positive outlet in the life of these immigrants. I'm so incredibly heartened and hopeful to see everyone in this room and all the efforts that are being made outside of the administration. As the panelists speak this morning, I want to encourage all of us to think about how immigrant family unity is much bigger than one policy and is not an isolated event in one place or one time. Let's imagine today what it means to look at the whole machine as we see immigrants not as a problem to be fixed, but as an integral part of our country. Thank you. So now it's time to transition for the strategic discussion that is going to focus on challenges and solutions to this critical issue of immigration. So to moderate the panel, I would like to welcome Laura Esquivel, the Director of National Advocacy of the Hispanic Federation. Laura?